All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend this call. I'm Sid, Head of Research at Fundamental Research, and I'm joined today by Trent Ambrosio, CEO of Inception Mining, a gold producer in Honduras. So the agenda for this call is I will kick off the call with our thoughts on the gold sector and the valuations we see in today's markets. Trent will take it from there, introduce us to Inception Mining, and outline his plans to ramp up production over the next 12 months. We can conclude this meeting with a Q&A. Before I get started, to everyone who has dialed in, I also recommend to click on the link we sent out. You'll then be able to see my screen. You can either wait till the end to ask questions, or if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to type them in and we'll try to respond to them. All right, so gold has done extremely well in the past 3 months. All the prices have dropped from a high of $1,550 per ounce. The current price of $1,500 is still up 25% year over year. That's the same story with silver as well. Silver has prices have dropped from a high of $1,950 to the current price of $1,750, which is still up 22% year over year. In terms of gold to silver ratio, which is a common metric used by analysts and investors to judge the pricing of silver, it's much higher than the historic average of 64. The current ratio is now at 85 times. This is a key reason why the consensus believes that silver will move up faster if we continue to see rising gold prices. Now, we have 3 reasons to believe that the US dollar will depreciate in the next 12 months. And as gold has had a strong negative correlation to the US dollar, we expect gold prices to stay strong over the next 12 months. Number 1 reason is an expected slowdown in the US GDP growth. According to the Conference Board, the US GDP growth is expected to drop to 2.3% in 2019, and that's down from 2.9% in 2018. And then further down to 2% in 2020. However, the IMF predicts that the global GDP growth is expected to increase from 2019 at 3.2% to 2020 at 3.5%. These forecasts clearly show that the US will likely underperform the rest of the world. The second reason I have is that the US is experiencing an inverted yield curve, which means that yield on longer-term bonds are now lower than short-term bonds. This happens very rarely when there's more investor demand for longer-term bonds due to uncertainties in the shorter-term bonds. Uncertainty in the shorter term, sorry. As shown by this chart, historically, inverted yield curves have been followed by recessions in the US. Look at the previous recessions in the early 1980s, late 80s, 2001, and the most recent 2008. Historical data shows that on average, a recession followed approximately 20 months from yield curve inversion. My third point is this, that's the high valuations in the US. They're well above some of the other major jurisdictions, which leads us to believe that we could see a correction in the stock market. Based on these 3 factors, and the fact that inflation has been very controlled in the country, as shown in this chart, inflation is below 2% and well under control. So based on this reason, we expect the Fed to continue to lower rates. And then it's not just us. The consensus forecast is over $1,500 an ounce in 2020. That's shown in this chart here. Now let's take a look at the valuations in the space. This table shows the valuation metrics of gold producers. As you can see, the average enterprise value to annual production is $4,500 an ounce. Average EV to resource is $170 an ounce. Now I want you to remember these figures when Trent talks about Inception's production goals. We've been covering Inception since 2017. In our most recent update, which is dated September 4th, 2019, we had a buy recommendation on Inception with a fair value estimate of 32 cents per share and a risk rating of 4. Inception is currently at 8 cents a share. In the first 6 months of this year, the company produced 1,500 ounces of gold, but in the first half of Q3 alone, they produced 1,000 ounces of gold, showing production is ramping up. We expect 2019 production to be 5,000 ounces with total revenues of $6 million in 2019. That's up 50% from last year's $4 million. With that, I would like to hand the call over to Trent, CEO of Inception Mining. Trent, I'm going to unmute you in a second. Trent, go ahead.
Yes. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, good.
Okay, great to meet everyone. I appreciate being invited to this call and share a little bit about Inception Mining with you. Would you like me just to go ahead and get started with that?
Please go ahead, Trent. So I have your slides up on the screen. Please go, you can walk through this and then let me know as we move ahead. I can change the slides. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely. As previously stated, Inception Mining is a producing gold miner with our primary project in Honduras, located 55 miles southwest of the capital city of Tegucigalpa in a mining community by the name of El Corpus. This mine has been in operation for 500 plus years. It was mined by the Mayas, the Spanish, the Dutch, the regional inhabitants, and has operated in the current format for the past 10 years. Inception made acquisition of this project in 2015. We managed it a year prior to the acquisition and have matured the project since then. As stated, we have produced gold on an ongoing basis with revenues in 2016 of 5.9 million, approximately 4 million in 2017 as well as 18, and we're continuing to ramp up. Production did decrease slightly in 2017 and 18. We undertook a significant expansion, acquired additional properties, we brought in additional equipment, and proceeded with expansion of an underground operation as well. So things have gone reasonably well to this point. The expansion is now complete. We do have a fully duplicate operating or production system in place now, which has enhanced our ability to produce consistently. And we have partnered with an outside source to process our sulfide materials. So in a nutshell, we've created an alternate revenue stream and expanded our existing production significantly. We also recently released a 43-101, which was our maiden resource report. So we didn't have a resource analysis done prior, but we produced significantly for a long period of time. We now have that, so we can see what resources available, predict mine lives, production rates, and those things. We have recently announced we're initiating an additional drill program in November, which will substantially change the outlook of that 43-101. So we're excited about that. And I've just received the drill program back this week. And so that is moving forward as well. Do you want me to keep going on about the project or how we operate, or do we want to go into question and answers? Give me some guidance on that, if you would.
Yeah, no, Trent, do you want to talk about the historic production and then the production you're seeing this year?
Certainly. So, yeah, as mentioned, historically, we did extremely well in 2016, had to shutter a portion of the mine to do expansion, and we were lucky enough that we could stay in production and grow organically through positive or free cash flows as we did our expansion. And now that that is complete, we've seen a dramatic increase, coincidentally, with higher grade material being available to us in conjunction with a better infrastructure, and then the augmentation that we've had with these additional gold prices. So we anticipate, as mentioned, 5,000 plus ounces of production for 2019, with the dramatic increase for 2020. We also see in the future We're working on a model to take the facility to a 40,000 ounce annual production model over the next 2 to 3 years with some additional capital investment. And we're continually expanding that. So things definitely look positive for the company today. As mentioned, we've got a quality staff in place down there. They've been on site for a period of time. We work well with the local jurisdiction, and good things for us in the future.
Trent, do you want to talk a little bit about Honduras in general? Maybe, the conditions there. Maybe talk about some of the bigger players operating in the country.
Certainly. Honduras historically is one of the most significant, when we talk 500 plus years ago, one of the most significant gold producers in the world. However, in recent times, what we view today, it's one of the least, if not the least, explored countries for natural resources left. So it's unique in that sense. There are multiple producing mines in the country. Ascent, which is a TSX listed company. Aura Minerals has a production facility which does 75,000 ounces of annual gold production in the country. So there's a prolific mining industry there. The country is in support of it. We hear about violence and corruption and those things, but if we look historically in the U.S., mining was in essence shut down, or precious metal mining, in the late 1930s and 1940s for World War II, where in contrast, this mine has produced for 500 years. So when we analyze or look at risk, any jurisdiction has risk or geopolitical risk. This production facility has been in operation as it sits today for 40 plus years without any government or regulatory interference. We do operate to U.S. standards and adhere to the mining acts associated with the different regulatory bodies in the world. And then when we talk about violence, we don't have a real issue with that. We look at some of the inner cities in the United States, and for instance, Chicago, you have a weekend on the 4th of July where you have 100 plus shootings. That type of violence doesn't happen in Honduras. There is gang on gang violence, but it regularly steers clear of our production facility. So Honduras as a whole has been quite friendly and welcoming to us. We collaborate with the mining commission and the local governments. We do community service. We have built a trade school in the local community to teach trade. We're instrumental in developing and building a children's cafeteria or a daycare facility. We have developed a infirmary, some kind of medical care for the local community. So it's very much a community-driven project, and we do have the support there.
How big is the operations now, Trent, in terms of employees, just to get people to understand the scale of what's going on down there?
Certainly. The mine itself sits on a concession which is 200 hectares, almost 500 acres. We have 100 plus employees currently, and it fluctuates between 110 and 120 depending on what we're doing exploration wise and whatnot. We do have additional concessions in excess, either that we currently are exploring or own or operate, which grants us another 5,000 hectares. So the project is very expandable and growable. The current 43101 resource analysis sits on our Claverico concession, which is 200 hectares, and the deposit itself is been identified on less than 2 acres. So we definitely have room for exploration, growth, and expansion.
Okay, so listeners, if you have any questions, feel free to type in, or you can raise your hands on your screen so I can kind of unmute you. But in between, I actually have received two questions. So Trent, I'll go ahead with that now. What is the current OPEX operating cost?
Per ounce or monthly run rate? What's the
I
question?
think it's easier to understand per ounce basis. So if you want to give those numbers or maybe some guidance.
Uh, our current is, when we talk about on-site gold production, is less than
Sorry,
400.
Trent, to interrupt you there. I know you have not really disclosed the cost per ounce numbers, but from what we have seen in the financial statements, just for the listeners here, so Inception in the past 2 quarters, they've been generating approximately $1 million a quarter in revenues, and the operating margin in Q2 was about 55% or 45%. So that was the run rate in Q2. So maybe you can expand on that, Trent.
Yes, and that's a better way to look at it, is from that cost model. Our internal calcs show it at under $400 per ounce, but it is not, like we said, it's not been disclosed. And depending on production rates, obviously it decreases dramatically as our production numbers go up.
Okay. The second one I have here is there a need to raise capital? If so, how much?
As of this moment in time, we do not have an immediate need for capital. We are fairly well funded. We are growing organically. As we talk about this migration to a more significant production rate, to that from 10,000 targeted to $40,000, or I'm sorry, 40,000 ounces annually, we would definitely want to raise additional capital to do that. Our only desire to raise capital today would be to restructure our debt. We do have a debt on our books that we're looking at refinancing, making it more feasible, more practical for the company, and or taking it out with equity.
Okay, sounds good. I don't see any further questions. Maybe Trent, if you want to finish it off by giving us some catalysts that we can look out for from the company.
Absolutely. As previously mentioned, we've just finished third quarter. Our third quarter results should be posted mid-November, is my guess. I mean, that is it's something of interest for me and should be for everyone on this call. In conjunction with that, this drill campaign, I'm sure we'll find some interesting data that will release either intercepts and new targets possibly as we go through that. So those are the two real key components to this. We do have a project in Idaho that there might be something taking place on that might come out, but all in all, as of this moment in time, a fairly positive outlook from my perspective on the company, production, and revenues.
Really appreciate it, Trent. So we'll also be doing an update when the Q3 numbers are out. So thank you so much, Trent, for being on the call and giving us your take on the company's plans. Listeners, thank you so much for taking the time. You can hear a recording of this presentation, which will be uploaded in a day or two on our website. So, and any questions you have for me or Trent, feel free to email us at info@researchfrc.com. Again, info@researchfrc.com. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.